Hello everybody and welcome back. Today we're going to talk about what exactly threat is, how to get it, and how to keep it. Now threat is really weird because it's a big invisible number. We don't know exactly what quantifies it. Back in the day, Omen used to have their own libraries. They would look at the combat log and compare it with their library and see how much threat you would do according to how much damage it was. But nowadays, Blizzard built their own threat meter and it's just fed to every add-on through an API. So we don't know exactly how much threat is generated per move, but we can come up with some good simple ideas and basic functions to be able to generate threat and hold it very efficiently. So the first thing is I think every tank should have the add-on Omen. Omen is really good. It helps give you a nice chart to see exactly how much threat you have, how much threat everybody else has. So it lets you be able to chain pull better. It lets you be able to kite. It just basically tells you exactly what's going on so that you feel more comfortable walking away from a mob, coming back to it, taunting off. It really helps put things in perspective. Now basically what threat is, it's a number that dictates who this non-player controlled target or NPC will be attacking. So if it's a boss, if it's mobs, whoever it is that is not controlled by a player is subject to threat. Think of DPS charts and the number one DPS is getting hit by the mob. So as long as you are top in the threat meters, you are going to be getting hit by that mob. The way of generating threat is by simply hitting the mob. Now if you hit the mob single target, normally single target moves have higher threat and AoE moves have slightly less threat, but there are some moves that are a little bit of an exception. However, AoE threat is weaker than single target. Once threat is generated, threat is never lost unless you go down and die, or you leave combat by either evade bugging or going invisible. So you don't have to worry about losing all the threat that you've generated before unless you meet one of these criteria or a boss has a reset function. Now as a tank, you don't have to worry too much anymore about threat. Way back when in World of Warcraft, you did have to, and threat was built up very slowly, but nowadays threat is built up very quickly and you don't really have to worry about it. You generate a huge amount of threat relative to the amount of damage you do. That's why normally tanks sit at the bottom of a DPS chart, but they're well above in the threat meter, just so that everybody can serve their function and purpose a lot better. Threat generation has been simplified. So let's go over exactly how to generate and hold that threat. Every tanking class has AoE and cleave abilities. I'm going to put some here on the screen just so that you know exactly what I'm talking about. This screen does not include every single ability, but just one example of each of these that you do have. Now, before we keep moving on and talking about threat and building it, you need to make sure that these moves actually land. That means if you miss your cleave ability on one of the mobs, that means that threat is only generated if that ability hits that mob. So if you're pulling 3 or 4 mobs and you only hit 1 or 2, the other one is not going to have any threat built up and could potentially become loose and rain havoc on your team. A very good rule of thumb when starting a trash pull or an AoE pull is to jump into that pull, do 1 AoE move, and then position everyone for 1 cleave ability, and then you start your regular rotation. So while you're getting them into place, they get 1 AoE and 1 cleave ability. That should be plenty to be able to hold all the threat on all of them. When every mob is down to about 50%, you should be able to safely walk away from that mob and kite it a little bit and not lose threat. Now, there are bosses and higher HP mobs where this isn't possible. The more HP a mob has, the more you need to hit it in order to generate enough threat to be able to walk away from it. But for most trash pulls, 50% is when you can walk away. Now here in the background, you'll see I'm running a dungeon and I tried to make an example of this. I started running away and chain pulling at a much earlier time than I think would be optimal. When you are chain pulling, if you do want to stack pull as well, you can basically go to one mob, hit it to about 70%, run to a new one and pull it and still be able to hold that threat. Now here I'll show you some more examples of exactly when I walk away and how much threat I've generated and how easy it is to keep that threat. DPS does not generate that much threat at all, so losing threat isn't something that you should be seeing as long as you land every hit. In order to really become proficient at holding threat, being able to kite and knowing when to walk away, I do highly suggest practicing. Practice can come in the form of doing regular heroics, time walking dungeons, or just a regular normal dungeon. This means that you're going to be over geared for this dungeon and you're going to be generating more threat than the dungeon was attuned for, so you should be perfect perfectly fine. You can even get away with just focusing on your threat and ignoring active mitigation if you're doing something as easy as a regular dungeon. Now here, I'm going to show you an extreme example. This is the last boss in Blackroot Hold. This is a Mythic +2 run, and I'm going to stop DPS at 50%. As you can see, at 50%, I stop hitting the boss. Once he comes back up, I target him, but I'm not doing any damage to him whatsoever. You start seeing the threat climb up to the DPS, but the boss goes down before I lose that threat. So as long as you're on your rotation, as long as you're doing what you should be doing as a tank and landing all of your abilities, holding threat should never be an issue. Overall, I do suggest that every tank goes out there and practices. It's a very good idea to know exactly when to walk away, just because kiting as a tank is an invaluable resource. If your healer ever goes down or you're losing health too quickly, kiting is a very good ability that will certainly save your life. There are also some Mythic Plus affixes that call for kiting. Whether you're talking getting too many stacks of necrotic or any other affix, it's a very good idea to learn how to kite so that you can run away from these mobs and have your DPS wail on them while they try to track you down. Again, the biggest rule for this is the fact that you need to land your AoE and cleave abilities before you can walk away. If you do not land them, you need to spend a few more seconds, one more rotation in there to be able to land them. So make sure that your AoE and your cleaves are off cooldown when you pull a new mob. Go in there, hit them with one AoE, one cleave, do one full rotation of that, and then you can walk away from them safely. If you do not feel comfortable doing this, then I highly suggest running a heroic, a regular dungeon, or even a time walking dungeon. Those are always attuned at a much lower level, so you should be overgeared and you should be fine being able to walk away from those situations. Being able to kite and being able to know how much threat you're holding on a mob is invaluable for running Mythic Plus dungeons, keeping to a timer, and being able to beat some affixes. Just in case you were running your head into a wall trying to beat that necrotic this week, this is an invaluable option, being able to kite. I hope you guys took something away from that. Hopefully my footage in the background helped out. I was running this Mythic +2. I saw a lot of opportunities to be able to run away and to be able to show you just exactly how easy generating threat is nowadays, and losing mobs should never happen. If you lose a mob while you're running a Mythic Plus, that could mean the difference between completing it and getting a depleted keystone. So again, make sure you guys practice. Thank you guys for watching, and good luck tanking out there.